Well, I want to welcome you back to the Sportcology Institute training series that we're doing on what do you watch for when you watch the Olympics. Today in this series, we're going through the same process we do with the athletes that we train here and online at the Sportcology Institute, and that is to study what happens to them when they watch the Olympic Games so that they know what affects them emotionally, mentally, and technically. What are the things that are inspired in them? What are the things that move them? I hope you're listening to this series and watching the Olympic Games, and I want you to think of how powerful these images can affect you and your children. Where's the pilot light on in your Olympic flame? She was 7 years old and watched the 11th Olympic Games in Montreal in her home country and witnessed something that had never been done before in the Games. It was what they talked about every day, and it planted a seed that started to grow. It was talked about every day on the TV, in the papers, on the radio, and before, during, and after school. The seed had been sown. What she would do had to be learned, and because her father was the first part-time level 4 coach in skiing, it was assumed she would pursue something in skiing. She was going to do something, but what? Because of what she watched on TV during the Olympics in 1976. I'm Jungle Jim Hunter, and you're listening to 831 Living Your Best Life podcast, where we inspire participation, communicate precision, and empower performers to podium. And we hope you will tell everyone to go to their favorite podcast provider or junglejimhunter.com or YouTube and subscribe and download. Click on like, rate, and review us, and become an 831er, someone that helps somebody else live their best life because you've been inspired by this podcast to live your best life. Well, it's day 8 of the 32nd Olympic Games, and it's going by fast. And it's only 24 days to the 16th Paralympic Games that will come up later in August. Well, what was it that everyone was talking about? If you watched the 11th Olympic Games in Montreal, you talked about it. Nadia Comaneci and her perfect 10 score in gymnastics. Our young Canadian athlete couldn't get enough of Nadia's performance. She started thinking what she could do. What could I make in my life that would make an impact? The seed had been sown and was starting to grow, and during the opening ceremonies of the 15th Olympic Winter Games in Calgary, she was in a choir and asked to be a singer. There, in the green portion of the Olympic rings, singing as part of the opening ceremonies, she stood and sang her heart out. She did her part, and then as the athletes entered, she caught a glimpse, and the pilot light in her Olympic flame was lit. She caught a glimpse, breathed their air. Maybe some of that Olympic dust would rub off on her as they walked by. She shivered, shook, and shuddered right through to her bones. How do I get there? How can I get there? What could I do to move from the Olympic choir to being on the field, entering the stadium? I have to do this. How? What? When? Where? Then she found out that a new sport for women was being introduced to the Olympic schedule and could possibly be in the Olympic Games in the future. Like Nadia, this would be a first that could change the sport, change it for women, maybe even change our country. In 1992, she became part of a group of women that agreed that in 10 years, their sport would be gender equal and included in the Winter Games. No one knew where that would be, but it would be there in 2002, and it was in her heart, and she would be there. She did all she could and gave her Nadia Comaneci moment a chance to breathe. Her father proved that a part-time instructor could become a level 4 coach, and she was inspired by his inspiration. Then it was announced that the women's bobsleigh would be in the 2002 Games in Salt Lake City. She watched the Canadian men win gold in Nagano in 1998, a sport dominated by the Europeans. She trained and could feel the glow of the gold medal. With an old 1992 sled, she pressed on toward Salt Lake City. The standard of entry? Top 6 in the world, and she exceeded it with 2 third-place finishes in Eagles, Austria, and then a 5th in the World Championships in 2001. Christina Smith finished 9th in the 19th Olympic Winter Games in Salt Lake City, achieving 2 of her goals, getting women's bobsleigh into the Games and being the first Canadian woman to do so. After the Games, Christina trained and spoke to groups, and after speaking at the National Sports School, a young lady came up and asked her questions. She was going to be an alpine skier, and she asked questions and for some reason gave bobsled a try. When she committed, Christina gave her sled. Kaylee Humphreys was inspired to go all the way to the podium in the 21st Olympic Winter Games in Vancouver. Kaylee won gold and Helen Upperton won silver, and bobsleigh was a strength in Canada. Christina, who was inspired in the 21st Olympic Games in Montreal by Nadia Comaneci's 10th, guided by her parents to pursue excellence, made a difference in the country. During her training, a young slider program was developed, and a young man was getting used to starting in the start house, was sitting on his sled. Christina walked by, put her hand on his shoulder, and spoke to him, inspiring him. Tristan Walker was his name, and his team won silver in Pyeongchang at the 23rd Olympic Winter Games. What Olympian is being inspired as a result of these games in Tokyo? Inspiration may be just one moment, but it has a legacy that continues and will be felt in 2022 at the 24th Olympic Winter Games because Tristan Walker is training to be there. Everything goes right, he will be there again, representing Canada. Is it the gold medalist that matters? Or is it the volunteer coach that inspired a child when they were young? Christina Smith, a pioneer in bobsleigh, is still affecting Canadians and athletes around the world 46 years later. Almost half a century of impact. That's got to be worth something. When you are watching the games in Tokyo, maybe you are moved to do something. Maybe you are inspired to coach or volunteer or raise money or support a team or an athlete. Or see the seed that is sown in your child's heart, and you can nurture it until it comes to life and the Olympic flame is lit. The fire in the flame starts somewhere, and Christina Smith lit a lot of Olympic pilot lights along the way. Christina was singing in a choir and was there to have her flame lit. She was just a volunteer when it all started. We have a tendency to focus on the gold medalist and honor them, but this podcast is called 831, not because of what I did, but because of what 831 people did whose shoulders I had the privilege of getting to stand on, because they did for me what I could not do for myself. I couldn't have made it without the 831 people that stepped up, stepped forward, and stepped into my life and made a difference. Christina Smith gave all she had and continues to say thank you and help others get their chance to go for gold. Watch the games and let them inspire you. Every Olympian should have a plan for what they are going to do beyond the finish line to leave behind more than they were given before they get in the start. Christina Smith lives that way every day. Watch the games. Watch the games with your children and see what inspires them, what seeds are sown, and begin to nurture a young person. You never know what will grow and the kind of legacy you will leave. Thank you for listening. I hope you will have grown and will be living your best life the next time we meet. Our quote for the day: first impressions open doors, but lasting impressions leave a legacy that lasts for lifetimes.